Welcome to the deep dive. Look, for like a lot of Nigerians, you're probably already thinking about the 2027 elections. There's this real desire for change, isn't there? And you're probably keen to understand the shifts happening within the opposition, specifically how the National Opposition Coalition Group, the NOCG, they've now adopted the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, as their unified party platform for 2027. So, yeah, you're definitely in the right place if that's on your mind. Okay, so let's unpack this. Today, our deep dive is focused squarely on one of the most, well, talked about figures in Nigerian politics right now, Peter Obi. We're going to dig into his journey, his core principles, and, kind of impact he might have, especially for those of you really rooting for change. Our main source here is a pretty detailed piece from Restore Nigerian News. It's titled Agenda 2027. Get a grip on Peter Obi, the populist maestro ace of the ADC 2027 presidency challenge. And right off the bat, the article calls him a maverick populist politician. So what does that actually mean in the context of Nigeria and the ADC's push for 2027?
Well, it means he really represents a different way of doing politics, doesn't he? His background, his actions, they set him apart. And that's a big reason why he's, right at the forefront of this new opposition coalition with the ADC. If you're someone looking for a break from, let's say, business as usual politics, his story gives you a lot to think about.
Absolutely. So let's maybe rewind a bit. Start at the beginning to understand where this maverick comes from. Peter Obi, born July 19th, 1961, in Onitsha, Anambra State. That makes him, 64 now?
Yeah, 64 as of this month, September 2025. He went to Christ the King College there in Onitsha, then got a philosophy degree from UNN, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, back in '84.
But he didn't stick with academia for long, did he? The source really paints him as this archetypical Igbo man. It's the quote, highlighting his fierce sense of independence, entrepreneurial zeal, and uncommon business acumen.
Exactly. He jumped straight into business, import trade, banking. He became a serious player in the corporate world.
Yeah, chairman of boards for big names like Fidelity Bank, Powlick, Guardian Express Mortgage Bank, Future View Securities. The list goes on. Plus, board memberships at places like Cham's Nigeria Playhouse. That business background feels really central to understanding his whole political style.
It absolutely is. That grounding in the private sector, it's foundational. So when he entered politics with APGA in 2003, running for Anambra governor, it wasn't just, another politician throwing his hat in the ring. It was a businessman bringing a whole different mindset, different expectations into a system that, maybe wasn't quite ready for him.
And getting into that governorship wasn't straightforward either. The article calls it notoriously controversial. He was declared the loser initially, right?
That's right. Had to go to court, challenge the results. He eventually won and was sworn in, but not until March 2006. A long fight.
And then his time in office wasn't smooth sailing either. These interregnums, as the article puts it, periods where he was actually forced out.
Yes, twice. First, there was an impeachment in November 2006. The House was dominated by the PDP then, cited gross misconduct. He fought that in court too and won. Got reinstated in February 2007. Then, before his first term was even up, INSC went ahead and held another election in 2007, which the courts later said was illegal. So, back to court again.
Wow.
Yeah, the Supreme Court eventually ruled he should complete his full term, which ran until March 2010. Then he actually got reelected for a second term, finishing in March 2014. These battles, though, they really showed his persistence, his commitment to following the process, even when it was tough.
Okay, so this transition from the, let's say, structured world of corporate finance to the, often chaotic world of Nigerian politics.
Yeah.
How did that business mindset, the Spartan frugality the article talks about, actually manifest itself when he was governor? Was it really that disruptive?
Oh, disruptive is putting it mildly. It was like an earthquake for the established political culture. His Spartan frugality and watchful prudence over finances, as the source puts it. It wasn't just a management style. It was a direct hit on the whole sharing of the national cake idea, that deeply rooted culture where public money is seen as something to be divided up among the political class.
Yeah, turn into politics.
Exactly. So bringing business discipline, demanding accountability for every inheritance, it forced a clash. It took, frankly, a lot of political courage and risk to put fiscal health above keeping the political elite happy. It definitely alienated those professional politicians, as the article calls them, whose whole way of operating, their modus vivendi, relied on easy access to state funds.
So the impeachment, you'd connect that directly to him disrupting this sharing culture.
The article strongly suggests that. It implies his refusal to just, dish out funds to political godfathers and allies, as expected, was a major factor. His stated motivation was always about fixing Anambra's problems, the corruption, the mismanagement. He saw government as needing efficiency, not just acting as a piggy bank.
That sounds like a really fundamental clash of values. But did the public see it that way? I mean, did this frugality resonate with ordinary people, or was it mainly the political class pushing back?
Well, the article suggests it did resonate with many people because they saw tangible results. Visible improvements in the state's infrastructure, healthcare, and education systems. And he got awards for it. Most Prudent Governor in 2009 from this day, recognition from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for immunization work in 2012.
Governor of the decade from this day in 2022, even after he'd left office.
Right, and critically, this almost unheard of achievement, leaving a healthy, near-full state treasury for his successor. That's just not something you typically see.
Unprecedented, really. But, as you said, this prudence had a flip side, a political cost.
A huge one. Within his own party, APGA, he was apparently scorned, shunned for not, quote, sharing the dividends of democracy. They labeled him stingy, a political turncoat. He essentially became a political outcast in his own party structure.
So that explains the move to the PDP in 2014 to sort of salvage his political future.
Exactly. The article frames it as a move to salvage his threatened political career, and that led to President Goodluck Jonathan appointing him chairman of the Nigerian Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC. So, it gave him a national platform again, but it also must have really hammered home how Nigerian party politics often works.
Okay, so we've traced his business background, his tumultuous time as governor. How does all that shape his vision for Nigeria now, especially looking towards 2027 and his role with the ADC? What's the core ideology here?
The source describes his ideology as something like a Javier Moy-like rightist, liberal, capitalist, populist. It's a mouthful, I know.
Yeah, break that down a bit.
Okay, think free markets, private sector driving growth, smaller government, being very careful with public money, fiscal conservatism. It's very much in line with the globalist, liberal economic philosophy pushed by institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, WTO. Lean government, prudent management.
And the article connects this to his inspiration from the Asian tigers, right? Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia.
Yes, he apparently often points to how they lifted themselves out of poverty using similar economic liberalization principles. That seems to be his model, his vision for Nigeria, and his postgraduate studies at places like Harvard, Cambridge, Judge, Kellogg, that probably reinforce this finance capitalist perspective.
But here's something interesting. He's very critical of the current Tinubu APC government, even though the article says they operate along the same kind of IMF World Bank principles. How does he square that?
Well, his argument, according to the source, is that they're doing it badly. He calls them poor pupils or even false and pretentious apostles of those principles.
What's his specific criticism?
He points to things like a bloated government, what he sees as lavish binge ostentatious spending, and crucially, runaway corruption. He argues these things are the real reasons for Nigeria's current woes, the hyperinflation, the cost of living crisis, the rising insecurity, not the principles themselves, but the poor, corrupt implementation.
And that critique, that deep dissatisfaction, that's what led him to the NOCG, the opposition coalition, especially after the Labour Party, his 2023 platform, got bogged down in leadership disputes.
It seems so. The article frames his joining the NACG as a direct response to what he calls the insensitively inhuman and exclusionist malgovernance of the current APC government. He clearly saw the need for a unified, stronger opposition front, which led him to the ADC framework.
So his role now as the de facto opposition leader for the coalition in the Southeast, what does that actually involve? What's the significance?
It's a huge responsibility. He's tasked with coordinating the growth and expansion of the ADC party across that entire zone. And the article explicitly notes this is a region often described as the most marginalized and derisively excluded from federal development programs, particularly since 2015.
So the appointment is partly about recognizing the region's grievances.
Partly that, and partly, as the source says, a recognition of his mass appeal as a populist mobilizer. They know he can connect with people, especially in that region.
And it comes back to his core belief, doesn't it? That government should work for the people, leaders prioritize the nation over personal gain. He contrasts this with his experience in APGA and PDP, which he saw as, quote, oligarchical fiefdoms for elite plunder.
Precisely. His stated vision is to engender the economic prosperity and social advancement of Nigeria. Focus on real, stable growth, not wasteful, ostentatious spending. That's the consistent message, and presumably what he wants to bring to the ADC platform.
It's definitely been a remarkable journey from corporate titan to two-term governor, SEC chairman, VP candidate in 2019, and then, as the article puts it, the most disruptive presidential candidate in 2023.
Yeah, that 2019 VP run with Atiku Abubakar, you can't underestimate its importance. Even though they lost controversially, it really, as the source says, singularly introduced and exposed Peter Obi around the most important political circuits and circles of the country. People really started noticing him then as a potential future leader. It was a definite game changer for his national profile.
Which leads us right into 2023. He initially tried for the PDP presidential ticket, right? But that whole process seemed to highlight this massive gap between his approach and, well, traditional Nigerian party politics.
Wow, absolutely. He withdrew, citing the primaries becoming like marketplaces and shopping centers for the purchase of votes. Delegates apparently going to the highest bidders, sometimes for like $30,000 each.
And his famous line came out of that, didn't it? I no give seaside.
I will not pay a penny. Exactly. Which realistically gave him zero chances in that kind of PDP primary structure. He was clearly disgusted by it, quit the party, talked about a party clique collaborating against him, massive bribing. He later even called the PDP a structure of criminality. Strong words.
And then the Labour Party steps in, a relatively little-known party at the time, but they offered him their presidential ticket. And that decision, that moment, seemed to ignite something huge.
Yeah, that's where the obedient movement really exploded. The article calls it an agglomeration of Obi's army of supporters, mostly young tech-savvy people. They were completely enamored by Peter Obi's signature anti-establishment frugality and imagery-laden political messaging.
It goes beyond just support, though, doesn't it? The source says they idolize, fetishize, and even messianism him. That's intense.
It is, and that intensity translated into action. These obedients, they campaigned largely at their own cost. They absolutely dominated social media, the internet. They transformed Obi and the Labour Party almost overnight into this potent third force challenging the giants APC and PDP. It was a genuine grassroots surge.
The 2023 results really show that impact, don't they? Let's look at the numbers again. Tinubu, APC, won 12 states, 8.79 million votes. Atiku, PDP, also 12 states, about 6.98 million votes. But Obi, with Labour, also won 12 states and got 6.1 million votes.
And it wasn't just the number of states. He won Abuja, the FCT. And incredibly, he beat President Tinubu soundly in Tinubu's own home state of Lagos, that Lagos result.
Wow. The article calls it a testament to the potent youth power networking influence of the obedient movement.
The source makes an interesting point comparing the obedience to other movements like Trump's Majie or Kwankwaso's Kwankwasisha here in Nigeria. It says those are more centripetal, driven from the top by the leader. Right, whereas the obedients are described as self-founded by disparate amorphous groups of youthful social media warriors who operate on their own whims and directions. They act more like a self-propelled centrifugal force surrounding their beloved idol.
So it's less controlled from the center, more organic, driven by these independent groups online and offline. That sounds harder for opponents to counter, maybe.
It definitely makes it unique, and it's this clear ability to mobilize youth, particularly tapping into those regional grievances in the Southeast we mentioned, that led the NOCG leaders to give him that zonal leadership role within the ADC structure.
And crucially, with that promise of a transparent, free and fair ADC party's presidential primary in the 2027 election. So they're acknowledging his base and his pull.
Exactly. It's a strategic move, recognizing his unique position in the political landscape right now.
Okay, stepping back from the pure politics for a moment. The article also touches on Obi beyond the campaigns. It calls him a bourgeoisie billionaire and ideologically a rightist neoliberal finance capitalist, but also highlights his advocacy work.
Yeah, it points out he's a vocal advocate for things like poverty reduction, improving welfare, creating jobs, especially for young people. He consistently pushes for transparency and accountability in government and speaks out against corruption.
And philanthropy, too. Donations to disaster victims, community projects like schools, health centers.
Yes, the source mentions those activities. It paints a picture of someone who, despite his wealth and capitalist ideology, also demonstrates a strong sense of social responsibility. It adds another layer to his public image.
And we can't forget the business empire that started it all. Next International Nigeria Ltd., starting with leather goods, then importing big brands like Heinz Salad Cream, Ovaltine.
That's right. He was the authorized sole distributor for those. Then he founded Next Cash and Carry, which grew into one of the country's biggest retail mall chains.
Plus, chairing all those other companies we mentioned earlier, it's a vast network, really underlines that entrepreneurial drive.
Absolutely. A diversified portfolio, chairmanship of, I think the article says, 11 major companies here and abroad at various points.
And personally. The article mentions he's a devoted Catholic, married to Margaret Hewson, 2 children, describes him as a hyperactive workaholic.
Yeah, constantly busy with high-level business and political events, a regular speaker at functions. Seems like someone who is always on the move, always engaged.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this deep dive into Peter Obi mean for you, the listener, as you're watching the run-up to 2027? His story seems to be one of leadership focused on prudence, a kind of populist idealism, challenging that entrenched culture of corruption and waste. For many, particularly the youth, the obedience who really connect with his frugal image, he's seen almost as this, well, savior leader Nigeria needs.
Yeah.
His influence on the ADC's fortunes in 2027 as the unified opposition choice now looks set to be absolutely massive. It could really reshape the whole presidential election outlook.
Without a doubt. The article concludes that Peter Obi's ultimate goal seems clear: to lead Nigeria's transformation into a prosperous, just, equitable society. Something similar, perhaps, to what those Asian tiger nations achieved back in the 80s. He seems convinced his leadership style, his focus on good governance, rule of law, that's the path.
So the final thought for you to consider. As Nigeria looks towards 2027, what kind of leadership does the country truly need to unlock its vast potential? And how does Peter Obi's unique mix the business background, the frugal principles, that powerful populist appeal fit into that picture? Something to definitely keep thinking about.